1000万 MLB 翻訳選手チャンネルへようこそ。今回はマーリンズとドジャースの対戦シリーズから見えてくるメジャーリーグの格差問題について考えていきます。大谷翔平、山本由伸、佐々木朗希といった日本人選手を抱えるドジャースと若手育成に力を入れるマーリンズ、両チームの違いから見えてくる MLB の課題とは。これからも MLB の最新情報をお届けしますので、ぜひコメント欄で皆さんの意見も聞かせてください。そしてチャンネル登録もお忘れなく。
Andy McCullough from The Athletic joining us right now, put together. What's up, Andy? Good to see you.
Hey guys, how are you?
Good. How are you? And loved what you put together. Encourage everyone to check it out. The little disparity between the Marlins and the Dodgers and how that series matches up. 476 versus 69 million. The payroll gap has never been wider. So before we get into that, how much consideration did you put into the Pirates instead? Because that could have fit the mold too, right?
Well, yeah, they just happen to be spending like 23 million more than the Marlins are. I mean, we actually, I wanted the story to, I didn't want people to think that the framing of the story was specifically picking on the Marlins as a franchise individually, because I think it's part of a greater trend you're seeing in the sport. Both, the haves are spending at like accelerated rates, and the teams that are not spending are just kind of holding firm. And so we could have written this like there would have been a historic disparity when the Dodgers played the Pirates this past weekend. There would have been this disparity when they played the A's. They share a complex with the White Sox, who there's like almost a $400 million gap. So the Marlins just happen to be in last place, I guess.
Well, and now we arrive on this series, which actually was an awesome beginning to the series. So what in your mind was the most interesting part of what you put together? Like, what do you think someone reads and really resonates with them or stands out?
Oh, I think it's the type of story that I don't think it's going to change anyone's mind really, per se, because I think that everyone agrees that the payroll disparity in the sport is a problem, right? Like, it's probably not great that there's a $400 million gap. It's probably not great that, only teams in the top 10 in payroll have won the World Series in 5 of the last 6 years. It's probably not great that a team in the bottom 10 hasn't won since, the 2003 Florida Marlins. They just differ on the solutions, right? Like, people on the, the management side would prefer that there are rules to curb the spending, which is why I think when the CBA expires at the end of next season, the sort of rancorousness of the likely lockout is going to depend on just how willing the owners are, to push for a salary cap. Obviously, folks from the, the labor side believe that owners should be spending more. And they believe that, it's like a reward. They point to the teams like San Diego, like Philadelphia, who have pumped a ton of money into their franchises in the last, 5 to 10 years, and have sort of been rewarded by creating these contenders kind of out of the ether. And the folks on the management side will counter back like, okay, but San Diego had to take out a loan to make their payroll, and the Phillies, sold a big chunk of equity this winter, et cetera, et cetera. And so, like, it's a common problem, as AJ was alluding to, before the break. Like, there's always going to be labor strife in major sports. There's so much money involved. But yeah, like, it's basically like, why is there so much dialogue now about a salary cap as compared to the last time? It's because the spending disparity has gotten this wide.
But AJ brought it up before. The Marlins, as an organization, I get it. It's different ownership, but it's the same MO. Make the playoffs or even win the World Series, break the team down. Even in 2011-12, when they did the whole Burley and Jose Reyes, oh, look, guys, they sold the lies to those players. Come on in. We'll get your dog in the houses. It'd be great. And then, bang, trade and sell everybody. Is that ever going to change without Major League Baseball stepping in some way to keep it a competitive league, in the sense that it's about competition, and that's why they have all these rules? Or everybody would just do this and say, whatever kind of product we put on the field?
Yeah, it's a good question. And I think part of what makes the Marlins so interesting in this case is that there are, like, if you look at this just like in a vacuum, right? What Peter Bendix and his front office are trying to do with the team, kind of stripping down the big league roster, trying to, concentrate their resources on infrastructure and player development and, all that sort of boring stuff, a weight room, that type of stuff, right? It makes sense, right? Like, it makes sense. We all know that teams in general are built from the ground up, and then you go out and get free agents, right? The problem is that you are asking a community and people in Miami to sort of trust you when the history of the franchise is basically not to be trusted. Now, most of that is under different ownership, right? Not under Bruce Sherman and certainly not under Bendix and his crew. But like, that's kind of what they're dealing with. And that's partially why I think there's probably apathy in that market. And so like, it certainly is we will see if they will break the cycle. Like if this group, the baseball operations group, can build something of like a version of the Tampa Bay Rays or the Milwaukee Brewers and that competes. And then we'll see if they actually spend to try and keep up with the Mets and the Phillies and, to an extent the Braves, but like they're dealing with a lot of history working against them, I guess.
How much did you press Sherman about the owner about the grievance? I know he declined to comment, and I don't know, what kind of situation you were in the sense of like pressing him about declining to comment about most likely a grievance that's going to be coming because of their lack of spending through the threshold that they're supposed to be in.
Yeah, I mean, you just said he's not going to talk about it. And so you could sort of ask again, but when they say, yeah, we're not talking about that, you kind of, okay, fair enough. But based on what their actions show, they do not appear to be all that concerned about it. They have not upped their spending in the way that the A's have. But, that's up for them to try and explain because they just weren't going to talk about it.
Andy, you mentioned, what you said about they have no collateral. They have no... They literally have nothing with the fans. And I think that's the biggest thing about this whole thing that bothers me. For Sherman to come on here and say, oh, we're building this. We built the thing in the Dominican and we got a better weight room and we're doing the spring training and them. Now, listen, spring training, it's them and the Cardinals, okay? It's not just the Marlins saying, oh, right. So he looks like a saying, oh, we're redoing. No, it's you and the Cardinals. Jupiter, the whole thing is also putting in a bunch of money. So let's not give him a badge of honor like, oh, way to go. Sherman, like, way to go, Bruce. Like, but also the problem I have is, he says, and you said this, the fans, they don't believe in him. They haven't given him anything to believe in. The years when they've gone to the World Series and they've been good, the fans have come. And they've come to the games and I remember going there when they were, 2003 World Series, I was down there and it was everyone was wearing Marlins stuff. 97, everyone was wearing Marlins stuff, right? But that for years and years and years, they haven't given them anything back. So at some point, I guess it's the old chicken and the egg question, right? Do them spending and getting the trust of the fans first, or do the fans just have to trust that they're going to spend, which doesn't seem to ever happen?
I think it's more about them putting a competitive product on the field year after year and not just, sort of basically finishing in last every year, right? The fans aren't going to come out to watch a last place team. This market, I know it's a bit apples and oranges, but like Miami, the Heat regularly finish like in the top 5 in attendance. There is obviously a robust baseball culture in the city of Miami. And, I would be interested to see if the baseball operations department gets things up and running and they have them being competitive in that sort of like 85 to 90 win window, which is certainly not going to be easy to do in that division. But if they do that, if attendance improves and things like that, I suspect it would. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they will be competing for like whoever the version of Juan Soto or Kyle Tucker is 3 years down the road, right? Like I think that they, as a baseball operations department, are looking at it as a challenge of like, let's try and create, the most robust player development system we can, have our sort of big league club and minor league system be an incubator for ideas, try and be forward thinking and try and combat some of these inherent challenges. It'll be interesting. Like, I think it's a very experiment makes it seem like it's destined to fail, but I think it's just an interesting gambit that they're undertaking, and I'm curious to see how it plays out.
Okay, here's a question on what you just said, though. We're not asking, and I don't think the Players Association, I don't think players are asking them to go out and sign Juan Soto, Shohei Ohtani, Freddie Freeman. They're asking them to do more than spend 1 year, $4.5 million on Cal Quantrill. Do more, right? I don't think they're expecting them to be the Dodgers, the Mets, whoever you want to throw out there, but at least try to be competitive, not just say, yeah, this is another year, we're just going to throw it away, especially after 2 years ago. They made the playoffs and they told the manager they're not coming back. They fired Kim Ng, right? They make the playoffs and they're like, oh, you're doing too good. Let's do something different.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there was an obvious reason why there was so much frustration, among, what remains kind of their fan base after it seemed like they were kind of moving in the right direction in 2023. I think at the same time, if you look under the hood at that team, it was a lot closer to a 75-win team than an 85-win team. Not to slight the accomplishments they had, but I think it was reasonable for them to say, like, okay, we probably, still need to fix some stuff with the infrastructure. But yeah, like it's a reasonable sort of complaint. Like, okay, why can't you do both? Like, why can't you spend on the weight room? Why can't you do all these, sort of infrastructure things and also add to the big league roster? I think it's a reasonable complaint, and their response is like, we have a plan. We kind of know what we want to do, and this is the way we're doing it.
They're playing each other right now, the Dodgers and the Marlins. Is it unfair to say, are we just putting the Marlins in everything they touch is terrible? Like when we talk about the pitchers throwing
like
live batting practice sessions. Yeah. If the Dodgers would do that, people would be like, they're innovative. This is the next thing. So how can we get away from that?
I think you just see if it works. Like, see if their guys get better. Like, see if there's results on the field. I mean, I think when, Joel Sherman had the story in, kind of near the end of spring training about how they were doing these live BPs and, in place of bullpen sessions. And like a lot of people, I was like texting folks around the game, like, what do you got on this? And they were some people were like, this is dumb, but the majority of people I talked to were like, it actually makes sense. And at a time when more and more teams are thinking about competing in a practice setting, like sort of amplifying the pressure of practice to prepare you for the game. Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And if it works, it'll be a thing that in 5 years, we will see teams doing. It could be a thing, as soon as next year that we see teams doing, or it could be scrapped before the year's over. I mean, I think that like a willingness to sort of look silly is kind of what an organization like this has to do. And you're right, Kratzy. Like if the Dodgers announced this or something, or if like, like Max Scherzer came out and said like, I'm getting rid of bullpens, I'm doing live BPs, because this is what I want to do. Everyone would be like, yeah, dude, like Max gets it. Like this guy's like, but like the Marlins don't have that credibility. Right. And I think to their credit, as of right now, they say they don't really care if people make fun of them if their stuff works. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I'm with you. It's tough when that team is trying to lead the pack, right? I mean, that's part of it too. I think you gain some credibility when you innovate and you're successful along the way. I don't think anyone wants to look at the Marlins over the past 20 years and be like, I'm copying that format. Yeah. It's really working, right? There's winning. There's, a lot of fans showing up, the whole deal. Like it has not worked out. And I feel like they just built back up and then made the playoffs. Then they're starting over again. But I do want to spend some time on the Dodgers here. So I want to start with this, right? The offseason was wild and super successful for them. And fans were freaking out. And since their 8-0 start, they're about a 500 team. I think it's safe to say this is not going to be the best regular season team of all time. They're not going to win 120 games. So what are your thoughts on the Dodgers side of this equation where, money can buy you a level of happiness, but not all happiness? And then I want to get into a problem with the pitching injuries, frankly. But what do you think overall?
I mean, it's gone about how you'd expect, I think. Maybe they've been a little bit worse. Than you would have predicted. But like, yeah, they're going to win their division. They will be the, almost certainly the number 1 seed in the West. And we will see how it goes in October. Tyler Glasnow's hurt. Snell is, a bit of a question mark, but should be okay. The running joke that a lot, myself and a lot of baseball writers were making as they just kept signing pitchers this offseason is like, we'll all remember this day when Ben Kasparius is starting game 1 of the NLDS. And, Kasparius is like now being stretched out potentially for the rotation. So like, yeah, I think they're perfectly in a fine spot. It's a long season. They're hopeful that they can get through it in a scenario where like Snell, Glasnow, Yamamoto, Sasaki, maybe Ohtani, and even Kershaw, Dustin May, all these guys are available, but most likely several of them are going to be down. But the whole point of the spending was just to, be able to throw numbers at the sort of inevitability of pitcher attrition.
Okay, so let's get to pitcher attrition. The Dodgers are down Glasnow right now. They're down Blake Snell, and we can go over a list of some others. How do we tie this into the Dodgers pitching, I would say, epidemic? I mean, Andrew Friedman talked about it and said we have to figure this out in the offseason, but is it something that they're doing, or is it more just about having a lot of money, spending that money on pitchers with elite stuff, and those guys tend to get hurt more often, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's not like Tyler Glasnow was making 30 starts a year for the Rays before he came over to the Dodgers. So, like, I would just put him in a separate category. Snell's thing seems to be relatively minor, and they're just going to be kind of careful with it. And that's sort of the, sort of the privilege of all the talent that they have. They don't have to worry about it. But, like, I don't know. Is it something that the Dodgers are doing that Clayton Kershaw's on the IL, or the fact that he's like pitched in the majors for 17 years, right? And then they've gone through, a lot of stuff with, the Gavin Stones, the River Ryans, the Emmett Sheehan's, all those guys. They had that autopsy this past winter in which they were trying to figure out kind of how to keep guys healthy. And it's like all these guys who are coming off surgery, they're not suddenly going to be healthy in 2025. So some of that is just the residue from kind of what they were trying to fix with their player development system over the winter.
Okay. Well, if you want more on obviously this series and the big picture, then check out Andy's article right now in The Athletic. Put a lot of good work into it. Andy, thanks for joining us, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, thanks so much. Have a good one.
いかがでしたか。メジャーリーグの年俸格差と日本人選手の活躍について語りました。大谷翔平選手や山本由伸選手を擁するドジャースが今シーズンどこまでいけるのか非常に楽しみですね。この動画が面白かったと思った方はチャンネル登録、高評価お願いいたします。ご視聴ありがとうございました。